Have you ever looked out at a place so empty, it felt like the world had ended? And then, out of the heat haze, out of the sand, a bird with legs like stilts and feathers like fire casually walks by, like nothing's weird. Welcome to Namibia, a country where the desert breeze, the wind sculpts mountains, and the birds, they don't just survive, they thrive in ways you're not going to believe. In this video, we're crossing the sand dunes of the Namib, the foggy skeleton coast, and the salty pans of Etosha to meet 15 of the wildest, weirdest, and most jaw-droppingly tough birds on Earth. We're talking about flamingos standing in boiling salt water, falcons the size of your hand that hunt like raptors, and a bird that literally punches snakes to death with its feet. But here's the mystery. Which one of these species can carry water in its feathers to hydrate its chicks across 40 degrees Celsius desert heat? Stick around, because number 12 might just be one of evolution's strangest flexes. Let's head into the heat. This is Birds of Namibia. You ever see a bird that looks like it walked out of a Final Fantasy boss fight and straight into a David Attenborough documentary? That's the secretary bird. And yes, we're opening with it because nothing else says, "Welcome to the wild," like a bird that hunts venomous snakes by stomping them to death in the desert. Standing nearly 1.4 meters tall, that's 4 feet 6 for the Americans in the back, with eagle-like wings, crane-like legs, and a face full of eyeliner and attitude. The secretary bird is a freak of nature, in the best possible way. And yes, it walks. In fact, it prefers walking. With those long legs, it struts across the dry savannas and semi-deserts of Namibia, taking slow, deliberate steps like a model with murder on its mind. But here's the twist. Unlike most birds of prey, it hunts on foot. Its specialty? Snakes. Big ones. Venomous ones. It spots them from a distance, chases them down at full speed, and then, bam! A lightning-fast stomp from its talons with a force over 5 times its body weight. Again, and again, and again, until the snake's not a problem anymore. Fun fact, its legs are covered in tough, scale-like armor, designed to resist bites from puff adders and cobras. Evolution really gave this bird shin guards. And the name? Secretary bird comes from old-timey European explorers who thought the long black crest feathers on its head looked like the quill pens tucked behind the ears of 18th century clerks. Office chic meets apex predator. You'll often see it in Etosha National Park or Damaraland, striding through golden grass, scanning the ground like it's reading a spreadsheet made of danger. It mates for life, builds massive nests in acacia trees, and raises 1 or 2 chicks each season, with fierce devotion and zero tolerance for trespassers. So here's your comment question. If you had legs that strong and a look that iconic, what would you stomp out of your life first? Let us know down below. And coming up next, a bird with a beak bigger than its body, a laugh that echoes through the rocks, and the kind of charm only the desert could design. If Tim Burton ever designed a bird for the desert, this might be it. Say hello to the Monteros Hornbill, a desert specialist with a banana-sized beak, cartoon villain posture, and a personality that somehow says, "I've seen things, dry things." Endemic to Namibia and just over the border in southwest Angola, this hornbill is a true local. It doesn't migrate, it doesn't wander, and it sure doesn't care what the weather's doing. It lives in rocky hills, dry savanna, and arid scrublands, mostly in Damaraland and Caucaland. Places where water is scarce, trees are sparse, and yet somehow this bird always looks like it's wearing a tiny tuxedo. Now here's your twist. Unlike many hornbills, Monteros Hornbill is almost entirely vegetarian. It feeds on fruits, seeds, and insects. But in this desert landscape, fruit doesn't grow often. So it's evolved to survive months with no standing water, extracting moisture from food and regulating its body heat like a feathered desert monk. Fun fact, during breeding season, the female locks herself inside a tree cavity using mud, food pulp, and droppings, leaving just a tiny slit through which the male feeds her and the chicks for weeks. Yup, she bricks herself in, It's either the ultimate parenting commitment or an introvert's dream vacation. Monteros Hornbill isn't loud like some of its cousins. Instead, it makes a soft, hiccup-like call, eerie when echoing off desert rocks at dusk. It also has one of the largest beak-to-body ratios in the hornbill family, but it's lightweight, more air than bone, so it doesn't tip the bird over. You'll spot them hopping along dry riverbeds, sitting awkwardly on thorny branches, or just posing against red rock like they know exactly how photogenic they are. So here's your question. If you had to live in the desert with zero water for 3 months, what one fruit would you bring to survive on? Let us know in the comments. Coming up next, a ground bird with speed, swagger, and a call that sounds like something between a cough and a snare drum. And yes, it can outrun you. If the desert had a trickster spirit in bird form, it would be Burchels Corser. This compact ground-dwelling bird lives in Namibia's open desert plains, where the sun bakes the sand and the horizon shimmers like a mirage. It doesn't fly much. Why would it? It's way too good at running and fast. We're talking speeds that could embarrass a house cat and confuse a camera lens. It zips across open sand like someone pressed fast forward, then suddenly freezes, blending into the terrain so perfectly, you'd swear it vanished. Its plumage is the definition of camouflage chic. Soft gray-brown, speckled and streaked, matching dry grass and gravel to a T. The male's got a black and white face pattern and a confident, upright strut, like he's on a catwalk nobody asked for. But here's the kicker. Its call sounds like a violent hiccup mixed with a snare drum. It bursts out of nowhere, often at dawn or dusk, echoing across empty plains. It's bizarre, it's hilarious, and it's loud enough to make you stop and ask, was that a bird? Fun fact, Burchels Corser is monogamous, often forming pairs that stick together year after year. The male performs a strange display, puffing up, bobbing, and giving those trademark weird calls to show he's still got the magic. But don't be fooled by the size. This bird may look like a desert chicken, but it's a master survivalist. It feeds on insects, seeds, and desert plants, and can go long periods without drinking, just like its hornbill neighbor. And it's smart. When threatened, it doesn't run immediately. It crouches, waits, and bolts at just the right moment, often confusing predators and photographers. So here's one for the comments. If you could choose one weird sound as your personal theme song, what would it be? Animal call, cartoon noise, or your own remix? Let's hear it. Next, we're shrinking things down, way down, because our next bird may be tiny, but it's got a love story that'll melt even the driest heart. If the desert had a romantic comedy, these birds would be the main characters. Meet the Rosyfaced lovebird, a tiny neon-colored parrot that somehow thrives in the dry, sun-blasted wilds of Namibia's savannas and rocky outcrops. Yes, parrots, in the desert, and they're absolutely adorable. These birds are only about 6 inches long, but what they lack in size, they make up for in personality and commitment. Lovebirds don't just mate for life. They do everything together. They fly together, eat together, snuggle together, argue together, probably. They're called lovebirds for a reason. The rosy-faced part? That's not poetic exaggeration. Their faces are actually a bright pink peach color, contrasted against vivid green feathers and a splash of blue on the rump. If a watermelon came to life and learned to fly, it'd look like this. Fun fact, they nest in crevices, tree holes, and even inside old weaverbird nests. And the female is a master builder. She'll tuck strips of bark into her tail feathers and fly them back to the nest like a DIY queen. She's basically the Home Depot of birds. And here's the twist. Though many lovebirds are known from captivity, these wild populations in Namibia are completely natural and beautifully adapted to the harsh, dry climate. They survive by timing their breeding with seasonal rains and feeding on grass seeds, berries, and cactus fruits. Their chatter is constant, light, high-pitched, chaotic, and oddly soothing. Imagine a crowd of hyperactive toddlers who are somehow also excellent flyers. You'll find them in small flocks around Windhoek, Etosha, and rocky hillsides across the northwest. They flash through the trees like flying crayons, especially near waterholes during early morning. So here's your comment challenge. Would you rather have a life partner like a lovebird, always by your side, or prefer flying solo across the savannah? Be honest, we won't tell your ex. Next up, we meet a bird with a beak like a boomerang, eyebrows that don't quit, and a voice that echoes through the canyon like desert jazz. You hear them before you see them, a series of strange laughing calls echoing through the dry savannah, like wind chimes and cackling monkeys had a conversation. And then they arrive, a flash of metallic purple, emerald green, and fire orange beaks. Meet the violet wood hoopo, Namibia's loudest little show-off. Unlike solitary hunters or silent flyers, these birds are extremely social. They live in noisy family groups, sometimes up to a dozen individuals, chattering nonstop, preening each other and moving as one unit, almost like a bird version of a traveling street band. They don't dig. They don't build fancy nests. Instead, they take over old woodpecker holes, hollow trees, or anything with a decent roof and a little privacy. Real estate is competitive. Here's the twist. Only one pair in the group gets to breed. The others? They're helpers, aunties, uncles, big siblings, all pitching in to defend the nest, feed the chicks, and sound the alarm if a snake or mongoose comes snooping around. Their colors are stunning. If the sun hits just right, their feathers glow violet and emerald, like oil on water. But good luck getting a clear photo. They rarely sit still. Fun fact, they use their long, curved bills to probe under bark and into crevices for insects and spiders, often teaming up to forage efficiently. And when it comes to attitude, let's just say if birds had podcasts, this group would never stop talking. You might spot them hopping around a tree like feathered acrobats, tossing their heads and bursting into group laughter at absolutely nothing. So here's your thought for the comments. Would you rather be the star of the show or part of a tight, unstoppable crew? Tell us below. And up next, we meet a desert bird that makes its own water from thin air. Seriously. All right, let's drop the cute and go full metal. This is the Lapidfaced Vulture, and it's not here to sing, flirt, or look photogenic. It's here to clean up what's left when the desert is done with you. Towering at nearly 1 meter tall with a wingspan over 9 feet, this is Namibia's largest vulture, and it's most intimidating. Its head, bald, its eyes, cold, its beak, capable of snapping through bone, hide, and tendons like it's peeling an orange. You'll find it soaring over the plains of Etosha, Kaukoland, and Namibia's remote hinterlands, circling patiently, waiting for nature to blink. But here's the twist. While other vultures wait for soft tissue, the Lapidfaced vulture gets first dibs, because it's the only one with a beak strong enough to tear open a fresh carcass. It's the can opener of the sky. Fun fact, those wrinkled flaps of skin on its face, the lappets, actually help with temperature regulation and communication. They flush red during aggression or courtship, kind of like a mood ring you can't unsee. And while it looks brutal, this bird is essential for the ecosystem. By stripping carcasses clean, it prevents disease, removes rotting waste, and keeps scavenger populations in balance. It nests on flat acacia trees or open cliff faces, often returning to the same site year after year. And although solitary when feeding, it's fiercely loyal to its mate and known to guard its nest like a feathery bodyguard with zero chill. Now about that eating style, it doesn't nibble. It dives in head first, shoulders deep, merging with gore all over its chest like it just finished filming a horror movie. It's not gross, it's functional. So here's your question for the comments. If you had to join nature's cleanup crew, would you rather be first in or just let someone else open it up for you? Coming up next, we zoom from giant to miniature, a bird so small it could fit in your hand. But it runs across hot desert sand like it's on fire, dodging predators with zigzag speed and stealth. If the desert ever held a Formula One race for birds, Burchels Corser would take pole position. No wings required. This sleek, low-slung runner lives in Namibia's open gravel plains and semi-desert. especially around the central Namib and southern Etosha. And unlike most birds, it doesn't fly unless absolutely necessary. Why would it? When you've got legs like suspension springs and steering like a rally car, the ground is your playground. Visually, it's a stunner. Buff-colored feathers blend seamlessly with the sand, and a bold black crown stripe gives it the look of a racing helmet. It's elegant, understated, and weirdly aerodynamic for something that spends most of its life darting between dry shrubs. But here's the twist. This bird doesn't just run fast, it runs smart. Burchels Corser uses zigzag motion to avoid predators and often freezes mid-sprint, becoming completely invisible thanks to its camouflage. It's a feathered ninja. Fun fact, unlike many ground birds, it prefers isolated nesting, laying just 1 or 2 eggs right on bare sand with zero protection. No nest, no fluff, just faith and stealth. And its diet, strictly insectivorous. Ants, beetles, termites, and anything small enough to crunch mid-sprint. You could say it eats on the go. Its name honors British naturalist William Burchell, who documented southern Africa's biodiversity in the early 1800s. And honestly, the man had taste. This bird is a low-key masterpiece of desert adaptation. Despite its dry habitat, Burchels Corser is remarkably active during the day, often when the heat is intense. How does it avoid cooking alive? It regulates body temperature by raising its feathers slightly, allowing air to pass over its skin like built-in desert AC. So here's your question for the comments. Would you rather be able to run like lightning but be terrible at flying, or fly like a pro but clumsy on land? Let us know. And next we shrink things even further, because our next bird is barely larger than a thumb, builds one of the tiniest nests in Africa, and still manages to look like a fluff ball with a PhD in home design. If IKEA ever designed a bird, it'd be this one. Tiny, efficient, and obsessed with building the perfect nest. Say hello to the Cape Pendoline tit, one of the smallest birds in all of Africa, and quite possibly one of the most meticulous home designers in the animal kingdom. Found in dry savannas and thornveld regions of central and northern Namibia, this bird is so small you could lose it in your pocket lint. Just about 8 centimeters long and weighing less than a tablespoon of sugar. But don't let its size fool you. This fluffball builds nests that would make architects jealous. Here's the twist. It constructs a hanging nest out of plant fibers, spider webs, and fluff, complete with a false entrance. Yes, a fake door. Predators try to enter the wrong side, while the real entrance stays cleverly sealed behind a hidden flap. It's basically bird-level Fort Knox. Fun fact, the male usually builds the nest solo to attract a mate, so it's kind of like extreme bachelor pad peacocking. And if the female isn't impressed, he just builds another, and another, until someone says yes. Dedication, or just a very fancy form of desperation? Visually, it's easy to miss. Soft grayish-brown back, pale belly, tiny curved bill. But up close, its dark eyes give it an alert, intelligent expression, like it knows you're watching, and it's judging your construction skills. You'll often hear its high-pitched seat-see call long before you see it, bouncing around in low shrubs, always on the move, always doing something. It's a bird with a busy schedule and zero tolerance for inefficiency. Despite its small range, it's actually quite common if you know where to look. And even if you don't, chances are it's looking at you from inside a nest that's been expertly camouflaged and engineered for survival. So here's your comment question. If you had to build your dream home with only your beak or teeth, what one material would you choose? Spider silk, grass, sandbags? Let us know. Next up, we trade delicate design for brute elegance, because our next bird is basically a flying red missile with perfect aim and killer timing. If James Bond were a bird, he'd wear a tux. But if he wanted to be seen, he'd be this bird, draped in bright crimson, diving at high speed, and catching stinging insects in midair like it's no big deal. Meet the southern carmine beeater, one of the most visually stunning birds in Namibia, and maybe on Earth. Its body is an electric mix of hot pink, deep red, and turquoise, like someone spilled a sunset across its feathers. And it's not just for show. This bird is a flying assassin. You'll find them along riverbanks, dry woodlands, and even open desert edges, especially during breeding season, when they gather in massive colonies to nest in sandy cliffs. And when they're not raising chicks, they're in the sky doing aerial acrobatics. Here's the fun twist. Despite their name, bee-eaters are immune to most stings. When they catch a bee or wasp mid-flight, they smack it against a branch to remove the stinger and venom sac before eating it. It's graceful and slightly brutal. Like ballet meets bar fight. Fun fact, these birds often ride on the backs of larger animals, like ostriches or antelope, to grab insects flushed out by their movement. They literally surf the savanna for snacks. And here's the visual kicker. When a flock takes off at once, it's like a sky full of rose petals exploding into motion. They chirp with sharp, metallic calls, looping and weaving like a coordinated squadron of fighter jets in a fireworks show. Their nests, dug into vertical sandbanks or dry riverbeds, tunnels up to 2 meters long that end in a nesting chamber. Yes, they dig, like miners, but fabulous. So here's your question for the comments. If you could eat one food that normally stings or bites, but be totally immune, what would it be? Bees, cactus, spicy peppers? Drop your answers. Coming up next, we go from fireworks to feathers with fangs as we meet a predator no bigger than a soda can, with the instincts of a hawk and the speed of a bullet. Imagine a bird the size of your hand. Now give it the mind of a raptor, the speed of a bullet, and the attitude of a much larger animal that probably works out 5 days a week. Meet the African pygmy falcon, the tiniest bird of prey in all of Africa, and arguably the most badass ounce for ounce. Measuring just 20 centimeters, 8 inches long, this feathered fighter lives in arid savannas and dry scrublands of northern and central Namibia, often near sociable weaver colonies, where it doesn't just visit, it moves in. Here's the twist. Instead of building its own nest, the pygmy falcon often takes over abandoned chambers inside massive weaver bird nests. Those big, tangled, haystack-looking things you've probably seen in photos. Sometimes the falcon shares the structure while the weavers are still living in it. That's right, natural high-rise roommates. One side raises bugs, the other side drops bodies. Fun fact, despite being a predator, the pygmy falcon is weirdly adorable. It has bright white underparts, soft gray wings, and a face that says, "I could murder you, but only if I feel like it." Its eyes are sharp, its talons are tiny, but don't be fooled. This bird can take down lizards, insects, even small birds. It's also monogamous, fiercely territorial, and surprisingly loud. Its calls are high-pitched kick-kick-kick notes, often shouted from the top of a thorn bush like it's yelling directions no one asked for. Behavior-wise, it's fast, twitchy, and fearless. It'll dive-bomb prey from above, zip through acacia branches like a feathered dart, and then perch calmly like nothing just happened. Despite its size, the African pygmy falcon is one of the most perfectly adapted hunters in the region. It doesn't soar, it blitzes. It doesn't scavenge, it targets. And it doesn't care what you think of its size. It's got the receipts. So tell us, if you could live inside another species' home, rent-free, who would you move in with? Weaver birds? Termites? Humans? Your answer might say more than you think. Next up, we return to the harshest heat of the desert, where one bird has figured out how to carry water on its chest, not to drink, but to give its chicks their only shot at survival. Some birds sing, some birds hunt, but this one delivers water across the desert, using its belly feathers. Meet the Namakqua sand grouse, a bird so well adapted to the blistering deserts of Namibia, it makes camels look like amateurs. You'll find it in the Namib Desert, around dry riverbeds, gravel plains, and semi-arid savannas, usually in pairs or small flocks that take off in a flash of sandy wings if you get too close. Visually, it's beautiful in a rugged kind of way. Males have golden brown backs, black and white barring on the chest, and a distinctive dark belly, which, as it turns out, is more than just stylish. Here's the incredible twist. Male sand grouse fly up to 30 kilometers each morning to reach water sources. But they're not just drinking. They're soaking water into their chest feathers, then flying all the way back to their nests in the desert to let their chicks drink directly from their wet plumage. Yes, they carry water, like flying canteens. No bottles, no straws. Just feathers evolved to hold moisture for over 3 hours in the heat. Fun fact, their feathers are specially structured, almost sponge-like, allowing them to trap and transport water while still flying smoothly. It's one of the most mind-blowing examples of evolutionary problem-solving in the bird world. Their call is soft and haunting, kelk, 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 and often heard during sunrise flights across dry valleys. If you hear it, look up. You might see a fast-moving silhouette, wings pointed like darts, on a mission to hydrate the next generation. Also worth noting, Namaqua sand grouse are extremely punctual. Their morning water runs are so regular, local wildlife guides set their watches by them. At 7:03 a.m., they're already gone. And get this, predators like falcons and jackals know this too, which means every flight is a high-speed desert gauntlet, but they do it every day. So here's your question for the comments. If you had to carry something vital across a dangerous road every day, what would it be and what would carry it in? Tell us your strategy. Next, we look at a bird whose nesting obsession could give interior designers a crisis. Because when it comes to weaving, no one does it like this fiery little feathered architect. If you've ever gotten tangled in a group project because one person insisted on doing it all, you've already met the spirit of the chestnut weaver. This small but intense bird lives in northern Namibia's dry savannas and acacia woodlands, often near seasonal wetlands. Because when it's building time, it wants location, location, location. And when we say building, we mean full-blown construction. The male chestnut weaver doesn't just weave nests. He weaves entire subdivisions of hanging, round nests, suspended from thorny trees like Christmas ornaments made of grass. Each one takes hours of non-stop effort, looping, tucking, pulling strands of grass or plant fibers until the structure is both strong and breezy. Then when the nest is perfect, he invites the ladies over. Here's the twist. If the female inspects it and doesn't like the decor, the entrance, or even the angle, she flies off. No deal. So what does the male do? Tears it down and starts over. From scratch. Fun fact, the chestnut weaver is polygynous, meaning one male may build multiple nests to impress multiple females. So during breeding season, some males are basically stuck in an endless cycle of nest, flirt, rebuild, nest, flirt again. Appearance-wise, the breeding male is eye-catching, a rich chestnut red body with black wings and a sturdy conical beak built for both weaving and snack snatching. Outside breeding season, he molts into a more cryptic beige, kind of like switching from party mode to work mode. Their nests often hang above water or deep in thorn bushes, placed to deter snakes and other predators, and they're tightly woven enough to survive the Namibian windstorms that rip through the bush. The weaver's high-pitched chattering can sound like tiny machinery, especially when several males are weaving at once. It's noisy, frantic, and somehow still kind of beautiful. So here's your question for the comments. If your crush would only talk to you after you built something impressive, what would you build? A house? A playlist? A bird's nest made of USB cables? Drop your best or worst ideas. Coming up next, a bird so distinct it barely looks real, complete with a mohawk, a curved sword for a beak, and a voice like a squeaky toy with an attitude problem. If Fashion Week ever hit the savannah, this bird would shut it down. Say hello to the African hoopo, part mohawk rocker, part feathered antique, and fully one of the strangest looking and most unforgettable birds in all of Namibia. Picture this, a medium-sized bird strutting across dry ground with chestnut orange plumage, bold black and white striped wings, and a fan-shaped crest that pops up like a feathery crown whenever it's excited or just feeling fabulous. The beak? Long, slender, curved, and perfect for probing into the ground for insects, larvae, and grubs. It's basically the bird version of a treasure-hunting metal detector, but with more style. You'll find the African hoopo in dry woodlands, open savannas, And even in rural gardens across Namibia, it walks slowly, head bobbing with every step, scanning the ground like it's reading secrets hidden in the dust. But here's the twist. The name Hoopo comes from its call, a soft, echoing hoopoo, hoopoo, that echoes across the landscape like a forgotten melody. It sounds distant, mournful, and oddly hypnotic. Fun fact, the hoopo is one of the few birds with a built-in defense system that stinks, literally. When threatened, the female and chicks can emit a foul-smelling substance from their preen gland, discouraging predators from going any further. It's like nature's pepper spray, but way grosser. And that mohawk, it's not just for show. When threatened or showing off, the crest fans upward dramatically, turning this mellow forager into a punk rock icon in half a second. The hoopo's nesting habits are humble. Tree cavities, old holes in walls, even abandoned burrows. It doesn't ask for much, just a good spot, some bugs, and the space to let that crest shine. You'll often catch one alone or in pairs, pecking quietly at the ground, or fluttering away in a slow, undulating flight that shows off those striped wings like a moving Rorschach test. So here's your question. If you could choose one dramatic feature to flash whenever you're annoyed, would it be a mohawk, a stink bomb, or a battle cry? Pick your defense mechanism. Next, we move from fashion to royalty, because our penultimate bird is basically a walking pastel painting, wading through salt lakes like it owns the mirror. You've seen them in cartoons, front yards, maybe even Las Vegas. But in Namibia, flamingos are wild, ancient, and so much more than pink party decorations. Say hello to the greater flamingo, the tallest and palest of all flamingo species, and the last bird you'd expect to find wading through caustic salt pans under a desert sun. But that's exactly what they do, and they do it with elegance. Standing over 1.5 meters tall, these birds gather in the thousands on Namibia's coastal lagoons and inland salt pans, like Walvis Bay, Swakopmund, and the surreal white vastness of Etoshapan. Imagine flat white salt for miles, shimmering heat, and a slow ripple of pink legs and curved necks weaving through water like dancers. Here's the twist. Greater flamingos survive in some of the most toxic, alkaline, hypersaline waters on Earth. Waters so harsh, other animals wouldn't dare step in. But the flamingo, it thrives. It slurps up microscopic algae and brine shrimp, using its uniquely upside-down, filter-feeding beak, one of nature's strangest eating tools. Fun fact, their pink color comes entirely from their diet, specifically carotenoids in the shrimp and algae. No shrimp, no blush, which is why flamingos in different regions can range from white to hot pink. And while they look graceful, their behavior is wild. During mating season, they perform synchronized dances, head flagging, wing saluting, even marching in unison like a giant flamingo flash mob. It's part ridiculous, part majestic, and 100% mesmerizing. They nest in mud towers, laying a single egg on a pedestal just high enough to avoid rising water. And when chicks hatch, they're gray, fluffy, and totally awkward. A reminder that even supermodels have weird baby photos. You'd think a bird this flashy would be easy prey, but flamingos stick together in massive flocks, where safety is in numbers, in style. So here's your last question before we close. If your survival depended on eating one food that turned your skin a new color, would you do it? And what color would you aim for? Tell us below. Coming up next, we end this desert journey where we began, with a bird that doesn't just walk the land, it rules it, hunts it, and turns the sands into a stage. One last look at a legend. We're ending this wild ride with a bird that's big, rare, and vanishing so quietly, most people don't even know it exists. Meet the Ludvigs bustard, a heavyweight of the Namibian sky and one of the most secretive, endangered birds in all of southern Africa. Standing nearly 1 meter tall and weighing up to 6 kilograms, this is no dainty desert dancer. It's a tank in feathers, built for long walks across arid plains and sudden, sky-shaking takeoffs. But here's the thing. Even though it's massive, most Namibians have never seen one in the wild. Why? Because Ludvigs bustard has a problem. It flies low, it's slow to react, and it often takes off in direct flight paths across power lines. Result? It's believed that hundreds die every year from collisions with overhead wires, making this bird one of the few species in the world being slowly wiped out by something as boring as infrastructure. Here's your twist. Despite being built like a linebacker, Ludvigs bustard has one of the softest, most haunting mating calls of any large bird. A deep, deep, resonant boom that rolls across the Karoo and Kalahari edge like distant thunder. During breeding season, males gather in loose display areas, strut with puffed chests, and make that low-frequency oomph that's barely audible to humans, but irresistible to a passing female. Visually, it's not flashy. Sandy brown body, pale face, black markings down the neck. But in the dawn light of Namibia's dry grasslands, it looks like it belongs to another time. Prehistoric, permanent, proud. Fun fact, bustards are among the heaviest flying birds on Earth, and Ludvigs is no exception. Watching one lift off is like seeing physics wrestle with ambition. It flaps hard, slow, and sounds like a helicopter with allergies. They feed mostly on insects, small reptiles, and the occasional flower bulb, quietly roaming far from people, far from roads, far from easy sightings. And maybe that's why they're perfect for our final moment. Because Namibia isn't just a place of bright pink flamingos and snake-punching falcons. It's also a place where rare giants walk the land, unseen and fading, unless we choose to notice. So here's the last question we'll leave you with. Which bird from this list would you fight to protect if it were the last of its kind? Let us know, because maybe the desert isn't empty at all. Maybe it's full of voices, just quiet ones. Thanks for traveling with us. We'll see you on the next wild flight. And that's our journey through Namibia, a land of heat, dust, and some of the toughest, strangest, and most beautiful birds on Earth. From snake-stomping legends to water-hauling heroes and sky-pink showstoppers, these birds don't just survive, they own the wild. If you made it this far, thank you. Now we want to hear from you. Which bird surprised you the most? Or better yet, which one would you actually want to see in the wild someday? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more deep dives into the world's rarest creatures. Like, comment, and we'll see you somewhere out there on the next wild flight.